One of the most confusing parts of retirement planning isn't how to build up your pension pot, it's knowing whether it's enough to call it a day at work. Imagine you're in your late 50s, mortgage finally paid off, and you have around £500,000 saved. The big question is staring you in the face. Can you finally stop working, or do you risk running out of money? For many people, it's hard to take the plunge. But in this video, we'll look at a couple with £500,000 saved and walk through how we work out if and when they can retire with confidence. 6 months ago, Debbie and Mark booked a call with me. Debbie is 57 and a HR manager, and Mark had just turned 59 and works in sales at a US tech firm. Between them, they'd saved £500,000, of which Mark had a pension worth £250,000, Debbie's pension was £225,000, and they had £25,000 in joint savings. In addition to these pots, their house is worth £500,000, and in the last few years, they'd worked hard to pay off their mortgage, which they did at the end of 2024. With their monthly mortgage payment no longer in the picture, they wanted to see whether retirement was now possible. The first step was to understand what sort of life they want in retirement and what this was likely going to cost. After going through our budget planner, their essential expenditure came to £1,400, covering items like bills, food, insurances and car costs. We then looked at their discretionary spending, so their hobbies, eating out and personal items like clothes. This came to just over £900 per month. Debbie and Mark like to travel in the UK and also abroad, so wanted to budget around £7,000 a year for their trips and holidays. So when we added up their total expenditure, it came to £35,000, which equates to just over £2,900 per month. Debbie and Mark also wanted to gift each of their 2 children some money for a house deposit. So it factored in a £25,000 in 2026 and the same in 2027. So based on these pensions they built up where they were in a recommended portfolio, anticipating 2 full state pensions when they reached 67, their planned gifts accounted for, and their annual expenses to increase with inflation, we backtested this plan against historical market performance and inflation data by using today's tax bands and pension rules. In the 804 scenarios tested, roughly half did not last until they were age 100 and would need some sort of adjustment either now or in the future. In many of the cases where the plan didn't last throughout retirement was down to poor market performance in the initial years of retirement. Here shows each calendar year's scenario, and here are the ones where they run out of money in their 60s and 70s. This is largely due to the negative returns early on. See, if you start withdrawing money during a market downturn, you are likely required to sell your underlying pension fund at a lower price, effectively locking in these losses. And whilst your pension might experience higher than average returns later on, at that point the pension value may already be depleted, and therefore the impact of this growth will be lessened as it is from a lower starting point. See, for Mark and Debbie, it simply wasn't worth taking on that risk if this happened to them. If they had both retired fully and the markets had a few bad years early on, they didn't want to have to reduce their spending. This is where we discuss if any compromises could be made, and out of that came their true motivations behind retirement. For Mark, work was becoming more stressful and demanding, hence this push to leave as soon as possible. Earlier in his career, he thrived on the challenges that came with this role, but at this stage of life, he felt increasingly disconnected from work. Instead, he could see himself in a new chapter of life, enjoying retirement, spending more time on the hobbies he loves like cycling, hiking and playing tennis. Whereas when I spoke with Debbie, she was more hesitant about the process. For one, she actually enjoys her job, she gets on with her colleagues and she likes the day-to-day social interaction. She also wasn't sure how she'd fill her time not working at all, but I guess just assumed that Mark and her would both fully retire together. After a lengthy back and forth discussing potential compromises, we looked at what happened if Debbie went part-time, working 3 days a week. The impact of this was twofold. Debbie is providing a source of income equating to roughly £24,000 net a year, which really helps funding their expenses so they aren't withdrawing as much from their pension pot. Secondly, she remains working, so she continues to build up her pension pot through her and her employer's contributions, which equate to around £3,000 a year. We remodeled their scenario and found if Debbie goes part-time for 1 extra year, it increases their sustainability to 66%, 2 years to 77%, and 3 years to 86%. For Mark and Debbie, this compromise best suited them. It allows Mark to step away from work completely, but also gives Debbie the chance to phase into retirement. She can start to see what life beyond work might look like without the pressure of having to give it all up at once and lose her connections from work. And from a financial perspective, this approach made their plan so much more resilient, lowering the strain on their pensions in those crucial first years and even allowing her pension pot to keep growing. So maybe you're like Mark, you're desperate to escape the stress. Or maybe you're more like Debbie, not quite ready to leave your work full time. But whilst this compromise worked for Mark and Debbie, it isn't the only type of compromise in this situation people can make. For some couples, simply reducing day-to-day spending in certain periods of retirement can make a big difference to the sustainability of their plan. Others might consider downsizing, freeing up capital from their home, or it may be about reducing or delaying gifts to children until you're more confident your own finances are secure. Another factor to consider is longevity. As I mentioned earlier, the plans are modelled to age 100, but we don't know if both Mark and Debbie will still be around then. Here it shows a longevity adjusted success rate for the plan, where Debbie works part-time for 3 years. We can see the risk running out of money in our third column at different ages, but in our fourth column, this is combined with their chance of survival, so running out of money and still being alive. Our longevity adjusted success rate here shows at all ages this is lower than 5%, giving them more confidence in their plan. In the vast majority of retirement plans, there's always risks to be weighed up, whether that's markets, inflation, tax, pension rule changes, or your own circumstances. That's why building in some contingency and flexibility is key. What happens if markets fall harder than expected? Or if you want to spend more in your earlier years of retirement? Or if rules change down the line? Having options means you don't need the plan to be perfect from day one because you can always adjust along the way. And with any plan, of course, there will be changes. Your retirement could be 30 to 35 years. And the same way you wouldn't make a plan at 30 and stick to it until you're 60, it's very unlikely you will in retirement. I've shown you how we worked through Mark and Debbie's situation and found a compromise that balanced both their lifestyle goals and their financial security. Retirement planning is never just about the numbers. It's about making sure the plan feels right for you. Thank you for watching the video. I touched upon some of Debbie's concerns around whether she's ready to retire. And if this is you and you want to know if you're ready, then check out this video here where I talk through the key questions you need to ask yourself. As ever, thank you for watching. Subscribe down below for more financial planning videos in the future, and I'll see you in the next one.